Alright, to be serious, I've done a response video to my atheism video, and sort of, I guess, defending Dawkins against what was a pretty casual accusation that I made about his tendency to indulge in some spiritualism, or, you know, be more indulgent of a pro-life position, can we call it? So anyway, I'll post a link below to, this is an hour, a little over an hour at the Global Atheist Convention, and this was really a pretty poor performance in my opinion by Dawkins. Yeah, so he's always got some good biological information, but yeah, it just didn't really say anything, and especially didn't say anything about the nature of our existence. And so I would like to get to that part of it, what it means and what a scientist is capable of saying about what it means. And so that sort of gets to To Be Serious's video. So we're going to play her video, and then I'll also do the Dawkins video again. I'm not going to listen to the whole thing, but I'll just jump in every 5 minutes or so and paraphrase and do such and whatnot. So anyway, but that'll be a separate video, I presume.
Alright, I just watched Gloom, Boom, and Doom, or Amendum, I'm not sure, one of his videos, and he said a lot of things that were absolutely true in that video. And he said a lot of things that were designed, as a lot of his videos are, to get you to feel emotional about something rather than actually doing something.
I don't know, designed to make you feel emotional. I mean, it just, I mean, I couldn't be more explicit in basically saying, in the video I was characterizing the idea that, yeah, this is, unfortunately, it's about popularity, and it's about charisma, and it's not about the message. And I mean, I was clearly making that point, so I don't know how you could design yourself to be, you know, a snake oil salesman when you're basically critiquing snake oil salesmen. So what sense does that make? I mean, I'm not arguing that people should have opinions based on what somebody else says. I've clearly said that in videos. I've clearly said they should understand their conclusions. They shouldn't just accept conclusions. I mean, how more explicit do I have to be spared this nonsense that I'm attempting to emotionally manipulate people? I mean, it's just a crap accusation. So unless you're going to explicitly quote where I some of this emotional manipulation, this is just a really cheap way to argue. I'm sorry.
He does it all the time. He will use emotional words and get people to feel the same hatred and disgust that he feels.
Oh, well, look, whatever. Again, you want to argue that I'm contriving it? That's actually what you believe. You believe I'm contriving my personality and my disgust, and the knot in my stomach is not real. It's a contrivance used to manipulate whatever, a few hundred people on YouTube. I mean seriously, this is your accusation. All right, so I might as well get to this point. Look, you're going to make this argument that somehow scientists can't talk about values, and I think that's just nonsense. So if you had scientists together, and they were having two conversations, one about microwave oven, let's say TVs. They were talking about TVs, and then they started talking about war hardware. And so when they talked about the war hardware, they just thought, oh yeah, it has a 50mm shell, and it's irradiated to tip, and it's really cool, it's a really high-tech, neat, cool, blah, 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 blah. And they're just having this conversation like this is the same thing. Like talking about war hardware and talking about the pixel depth on a LCD is all the same thing. Like you can't distinguish those two conversations. Well, you can distinguish them. All right? And it would be stupid if a scientist couldn't make it the distinction, if he couldn't, like Einstein, figure out that war would be bad and that you don't want to be doing that, and that these are malicious little bits of hardware. And so when Dawkins talks about biology, he is like some kind of redneck talking about, you know, the stealth bomber, and, you know, its big giant minigun and its big giant radiated shells, and yeah, it's got superpowers, and, you know, it's got super missiles and super, you know, all this this glorification of war hardware. And he talks about it in the same, with the same kind of horniness, and you're almost like, what the fuck are you doing? You're talking about a fucking instrument of doom, a little bug that's going to fucking insidiously implant maggots inside the fucking skull of another fucking organism. What the fuck? This is not something to talk about like, oh, isn't that the neatest thing in the world? No, it's the most disgusting thing in the fucking world. And so I think it would be ludicrous to say that a scientist can't tell the difference between something that's doing overt, obvious harm and things that are just scientific facts. There are times when the science has to be colored by the circumstance of the hardware, by the circumstance of the science, the pool that it's in, the bucket that's holding it. The bucket that's holding the circumstantial science is important. There's a difference between a car and a tank. It's not the same conversation. All right, that's enough of a clarification.
Tonight, in the video, I'll post a link to it in the low bar, he was feeling that Richard Dawkins is a, quote, spiritual atheist. And he went on and on and on and on about...
No, I didn't do any of that. I really didn't. Somebody else made the accusation that I was less than of an atheist than Richard Dawkins. And I just made the argument that, no, that's just crap. Because unlike Dawkins, I don't talk about the insidious nature of nature in some sort of glorifying manner. I'm enough of an atheist to know that intelligent design had unintelligent design, which is atheism, has a consequence, and the consequence is this idea of waste, and that's the argument I made in my video. So all this on and on and on about ripping Dawkins a new asshole is bullshit. Alright, I barely even talked about Dawkins, but now that you've brought it up, I'll talk about him.
Dawkins' spiritual atheism. I mean, there were so many points that he made that were to get you to feel emotional.
Well, why don't you quote them, damn it? Or why don't you play them, damn it? Alright, but this idea that you're, oh, there's just so many, I can't even provide one as an example, which would be nice.
About the whole situation. That it justifies talking about, in a sense. I mean, he gets you to feel emotion, for example, about how Richard Dawkins must be wrong if he has some scale that goes from 1 to 7.
Well, whatever. That was just a casual joke kind of critique. Like, yeah, well, you know, come on. I mean, that's just typical of a scientist. He can't even figure out that, yeah, I should round it off to 10, you know, perfect 10. I mean, it's the way to go. You just don't go with a scale. It's like earthquakes. What the fuck, we got a scale that stops at a certain number? Or hurricanes, it stops at 5? What kind of stupid scale is that? Can't you graduate it a little finer than that?
The scale, he says, goes from 1 to 7. What is he talking about?
It was one sentence in the fucking video. One fucking sentence. I mean, grow up. You can't find something better than that to complain about?
Also, in a recent video, talked about how life should be put out of its misery the way you would put out a misery dog. Well, that's not science.
Well, whatever. I mean, I'm arguing that it's a rationally based theory. So just as if Einstein and Dawkins got together and were discussing war and how bad a war is permittable to get. When is enough enough? When is enough too much? When is too much enough for you to say it's too much? I mean, this idea of acceptable, is it all acceptable? This is a rational conversation that has to take place among enlightened minds. Now, you want to say it's not strictly a scientific discussion? I'm going to argue it's strictly a logic discussion. And as soon as it involves logic, it involves science, because science is the premises for logic. Science establishes the premises for logic. You really can't have a conversation if you haven't scientifically established what kind of universe you exist in and where your origins are and what the factual implications of certain acts are, and that science tells you all of that stuff. So an informed scientist, the next logical step is to take the information you've gathered and draw conclusions with it. It'd be idiotic not to. And it's yes, I think the logic demonstrates that the sensible move is not to be an imposer, not to be a creator, not to play God, okay, with such an uncertain, messy, sloppy system. Don't bake this messy cake, or however to put it, this poison pill. Don't make one of these.
Boom, gloom, boom, and doom. It's not science, amendum. That is your opinion. That life...
Well, whatever. Again, it's an opinion based on a whole pile of logical and reasonable argument. Alright, so dissect the argument. But just to say it's an opinion is just pussy bullshit. You got to do better than that. If you're going to say somebody's opinion is wrong, then demonstrate it with some sort of counter theory, okay, that you can demonstrate to be right.
To be put out of its misery like a dog. Now, I'm going to read a quote which is not hard science. Hard science is not something you, gloom, boom, doom, engage in. It's not.
Whatever. I mean, this again, another just bullshit accusation thrown out based on no evidence. You're not going to document this at all. All right, there's a ton of dependence on scientifically established facts in my arguments. So to say it doesn't have anything to do with science would be idiotic. And obviously, again, valued conversations are always going to be where that next level of science. You're not going to find it written on a rock somewhere. There's not going to be a Rosetta Stone or a tablets from God that tell you what the truth is regarding value. So we have to discern it from the evidence that exists. But it would be stupid to say scientists are exempt from that conversation. You can't mix any kind of science or logic or rationality. No, it's only going to be a phantasmagorical, make up a fairy tale venue. I mean, that would be idiotic. And I've made the logical argument. You want to argue with the logic, then argue the logic. But don't tell me it's just an opinion. That's not a fucking counter argument.
You engage in a lot of getting people to feel the same emotion you do, and you also engage in a lot of...
Well, I just think that's inevitable. So you're saying that if scientists like Einstein were to recognize war as a horror and to express a sentiment about that there's some possible way where he could recognize that it's a horror without the horror being part of what he feels. That somehow he could possibly know what horror was without it stimulating an emotion inside of him. I think that would be impossible because we are feeling animals. We are not perfect Vulcan. Okay, we're human. And so we're stuck with this emotional connection to every word. All right, but you have to demonstrate how the emotion has either corrupted the words or that somehow there's an inaccurate association, that somehow when I'm provoking emotion, the emotion is misplaced or displaced, that somehow people shouldn't be feeling the emotion, okay, that I'm associating with a circumstance, that somehow they should find it tolerable, they should find it acceptable, they shouldn't find it sickening or disgusting if I describe a circumstance. And this is just such hypocrisy for you to make this argument when you make these appeals to emotion when you're arguing for vegetarianism. So this is just, you know, what the fuck? I mean, really, what the fuck?
Making broad statements like we need to stop all life, to stop all suffering, and getting people to feel the same emotion that you feel.
Well, whatever. I don't think that's what I've done. I don't think that's what I'm attempting to do. I'm making a logical argument that this DNA thing doesn't have a brain. There's no fucking understanding in it. There's no understanding of what sentience is, what the consequence of feeling organisms are, what it's like to be nauseous. And this molecule has no fucking clue about any of that crap. All right, and it's deciding what the world looks like. It's deciding what our fate is. And I'm saying we shouldn't be taking our marching orders from this freaking molecule. It's manipulating us. It's distorting and perverting and creating in us a perception of value, a need, a want that is completely personal. I'm arguing that what we define as what is necessary, what gets to have the title necessary, all right, should be a rational, logical argument. And what I'm saying is there is no necessity to create need, okay, because there's no need for that need to exist. The living organism, compelled or motivated by feelings, there is nothing in the nature of the universe that compels, that demonstrates that there's a need for it. It'll serve no purpose. It'll heal no wound. It will make nothing happy. It will accomplish absolutely nothing.
And you admitted it in your more recent video, most recent, well, the last 10 minutes, or whatever it was.
Here comes a big fat lie.
You admitted that basically it's not about the argument, it's about how much you can get people to feel the same emotion you're feeling.
Yeah, well, you're going to have to come up with the direct quote, liar, okay? Because I never said any such thing. I didn't imply any such thing. What I've basically stated is quite obviously people are motivated by emotion. And if you don't create an emotion in them, they won't get off the couch. They won't give a fuck. They won't even contemplate it. They won't give it 5 minutes of their time. So yes, we have to stimulate action out of our bodies, out of our mouths, out of our intellects through emotion. That's just a fact of reality. I didn't make up that one. All right? And when I talked in the video about charisma and popularity and all that stuff, I did so as a critique. I did not say these were good things, that people are compelled by superficial, I even called it that, cosmetics. I've used these words in my videos. So this is just a bullshit slander. Yeah, that's all. It's just a slander.
Well, I want to actually feel something that makes life, in spite of the drawbacks, makes it have a possibility of being meaningful.
Well, I'm glad. Fine. You want to feel. I mean, how does anybody make any logical sense out of that statement? You're basically saying, I want to make the happily ever after happen, or some kind of mush like that. Well, fine. Go ahead and want it. But don't tell me that's a rational, reasonable expectation. All right? You have no evidence that there is anything here but need machine. That I've made the argument. You haven't made a counter argument to the argument. Okay? We're made to be uncomfortable and unsatisfied. That's the design. All right? And as soon as you start extracting that superficial motivation, as soon as you start extracting the superficial devotion to the ego, the nationalism, the racism, and all the rest of that crap, you'll have nothing left. You'll have no Cheeto to chase. And it'll be quite obvious that the solution is to get the hell out of here then. I mean, if you're going to take away the superficial love and the preposterously nonsensical hate, you've undone, okay, the whole addiction. You've unraveled the only thing that creates any momentum for any kind of propelling of this thing forward.
And I think that in The Selfish Gene and a lot of his writings, that is exactly what Richard Dawkins is trying to do.
Well, if that's what he's trying to do, then he's the one appealing to emotion, right? Because you used words as I want. Well, really, what is that? What's the science in I want? There's no science in I want.
He sees evolution. He doesn't see it exactly the way I do, but I'm not the expert he is. So I'm going to bow to his expertise. And even though
well, whatever. I mean, there's a point where you say, okay, you're going to bow to the mechanic when it comes to fixing the car, but maybe you don't bow to the mechanic in terms of picking which car you're going to buy, or which color you want the car to be, or what kind of seats you want the car to have. All right, that's going to be a different equation. Or even fuel efficiency. Maybe the mechanic has his own subjective prejudices. So what's the point of that? I mean, you want to bow to Dawkins, go ahead and bow to him. Yeah, he knows details of biological science, a lot of details, and that's a good reservoir. But it doesn't make his opinions on war at all relevant. and doesn't make and in my opinion, the fact that he hasn't even, at least that I know of, declared himself vegetarian, shows a huge flaw in his understanding. I mean, he has studied this. He understands the mechanism of neurology. How could he still eat a hamburger? I mean, it's sorry, that creates a discontinuity in my intelligence.
I disagree with 2 sentences in this excerpt. I want to read them to you because gloom, boom, and doom, or amendum, or whatever, will tell you.
Well, to be serious or whatever. I mean, what the hell is this? Play the game with the name thing. But whatever. All right, we're not going to play this. She just reads this little crap here about genes and memes again, and I have already gone over this stuff. I have no need to. This is just a huge straw man. There's nothing in here that I disagree with. I mean, not profoundly. The point is, though, is he's not talking about whether life has a purpose. He's talking right here, selfish interest into, long-term selfish interest instead of short-term selfish interest. So he's basically saying community interest versus individual interest. These are all fine memes to have, but it has nothing to do with the question of whether the game's overall worth playing. Improving the game is fine with me. You want to give pawns more rights? Fine. You want to do something to create less, harm in the world? Fine. All right, but that's not the subject of the videos or the points I've been making. All right, it's not about can we make the bad better? Can we make World War IV? Can we kill only 6 billion people instead of 7 billion? Oh, sure, we probably could. So let's do that. I mean, let's make it less horrible. Let's have less victims of, say, a radiation leak. Yeah, if we can reduce the number of people harmed by it by 2,000, let's do that if we can, if it's economically viable. Who's arguing against any of that shit? The point is should we build the nuclear power plants? That's the subject of my video. And I'm saying no.
This is spiritual atheism. And I want to know if you, listening to this, actually think it is spiritual atheism.
Yeah, whatever. So you take one paragraph and call that Dawkins. Dawkins says a lot of things in different contexts. And whatever. The point of my video wasn't I hate Dawkins. I don't hate Dawkins. 90% of what Dawkins has to say is really good stuff. 95%. It's only the 5% he runs away from, which is recognizing that when he's talking about this war hardware, that it's war hardware. It's not just hardware. It's not just interesting devices. It's not just interesting technology. It's war hardware.
If it is in fact very informed scientific opinion expressing a hope for the future of humankind.
Yeah, right. A hope to go from shitty to just crappy. Yeah, fine. Yeah, bravo. I'm all for going from shitty to just crappy. But I would rather the intelligence recognizes that crappy isn't good enough.
And of life here as we find it on Earth.
Yeah, as we find it, analyzed it, dissected it, and figured out, oh my fucking God, it's cannibalism. And then when we took apart the human, we found out, oh, it's just fucking addiction. They're chasing cheese doodles. They're completely obsessed with cosmetic, superficial crap. Oh, damn. Broken.
Here's what Richard Dawkins says at the end of The Selfish Gene.
Book you critiqued more than once. But anyway, we'll go to the end where she throws on some more, whatever, snarkyisms. So anyway, like I said, I have nothing against this whole idea of humans being better than they are. Duh. I mean, I've made videos ridiculing nationalism, ridiculing ethnic, paying any attention whatsoever to your ethnic heritage. I've ridiculed nationalism. I've ridiculed sports obsessions. I've ridiculed all this trivial crap that the human race obsesses about. So I don't need this lecture. This is just such straw man crap.
Can't you do what Richard Dawkins and you have the will to turn against organized religion, then why can't you do what Richard Dawkins suggests and turn against your selfish replicators? Why can't you turn?
Yeah, turn against them exactly how? Like I said, you're the one defending the replication idea. I'm the one arguing that's completely a cultural contrivance, completely a mechanism of ego. It has nothing to do with anything a human being needs to do. Okay, they don't need to replicate. They just want to, because it's, again, part of their perception of what they ought to be. But there's no argument out of necessity. It isn't food. It isn't even sex. Okay, it's a decision to do a Frankenstein experiment, to inject another individual into a huge risk machine. All right, and one where they will inevitably not live happily ever after, but likely die silently ever after.
Against it. And stop buying the emotions rather than depth and arguments that will...
Right. So this isn't an emotional appeal that you're making right here. Oh my God, how can you be against the idea of making human beings better? And when no one's even doing that. But this whole video was an emotional appeal.
Will get us somewhere. Why can't we do that?
Why? So this isn't an emotional appeal. When you end a video with 3 whys, that's not an emotional appeal. Oh, please. And the answer to the why is simple. It's not the subject. You're on the wrong subject. The subject isn't, should human beings be dumb motherfuckers? No, that's not the subject, okay? Because I agree with Dawkins. Human beings shouldn't be preposterously stupid motherfuckers. Alright? Yeah, they should step above their selfish nature and actually recognize that they have a utilitarian function in the world and that their behavior has consequences. And I've only got about 2,000 videos expressing that exact sentiment. So this is just such bullshit. So another failure, another failed attack against a simple logic. So, haha on you. So anyway, alright, enough of that one. So I will do the Dawkins thing when time is available and such, and so forth and whatnot. But yeah, you really, this is, you know, this just isn't good enough. You know, these counter straw man arguments are just not going to make it. You got to do better than this, people.